everybody, and welcome to Friday Apocryphal Podcast, your one-stop shop for everything Friday Apocryphal and podcast. And boy, do we have a show for you today. Today we are covering the Wisdom of Solomon, chapters 13 through 15.
And we're getting pretty close to the end here.
Yeah, I think next week is going to be our last episode probably, because after this, it's what, 4 more chapters?
Yeah, there's only 19 chapters in the Wisdom of Solomon. I guess he didn't have that much wisdom to share.
Yeah, he had a limited amount of wisdom to share. So, you know what? I'm glad
they ran out of paper. You know, one of those things.
I'm glad. Yeah, that is a possibility.
I mean, we did talk briefly about the authorship, and it's certainly not from Solomon himself.
Not Solomon. Yeah, we talked about the date of the book in the first episode that we covered this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess next week is going to be our last episode for the Wisdom of Solomon. I'll be, I guess, picking up Judith.
Yeah, we'll be covering Judith after this.
Unless everyone wants to see something else for some reason.
Yeah, well, we have commentaries for Judith.
Yeah, we do. We do have commentaries for Judith.
Make it nice and easy on us.
That would be really nice of you, Chad.
Yeah. But I have the Anchor Bible, Wisdom of Solomon by David Winston. It has commentary and notes.
And the translation.
Yeah, it also has that.
Yeah, pretty important. We have volume 6 from the New Interpreter's Bible Commentary, and we also have Erdman's commentary on the Bible. And then all the other books on this table will not be of use today.
Dang.
But you know what? Next, I guess, no, not next week. On Sunday, we'll be covering the entirety of Lamentations.
And spinning a wheel.
Yeah.
Yes, and spinning a wheel. And you know what? Landon is going to have some competition.
Oh, yeah. It's about time.
Yeah, we're going to have a real rumble in the jungle. Except it's not in a jungle.
It's a wheel.
And no one's fighting. It's a wheel.
Spinning.
Yeah.
We're going to have a real spinny wheelie.
A spinny wheelie. No. Okay, Lawrence. We should make that a t-shirt.
Yeah, right.
Spinny wheelie.
That's an authentic Lawrenceism.
You know, when you say spin that wheel, I'm going to be like, spinny wheelie.
Yes.
Okay, so on this section, 13 through 15, I do have an opening note.
Great.
It says, from Herodotus onwards, writes Knock, ancient historians were fond of digressions, and one type was the retrospect, giving the antecedents of the situation of the moment. That's the end of the quote. The author here goes on to say, Polybius defended his regular use of digressions as follows, quote, for hard workers find a sort of rest in change of the subjects which absorb and interest them. And this, I think, is why most thoughtful of ancient writers were in the habit of giving their readers a rest in the way I say, some of them employing digressions dealing with myth or story, and others digressions on matters of fact, end quote. So that's all they say about 13 through 15, but I think it's clear that we're going into a digression.
And this is quite the digression. The main idea of the chapters that we are covering today is going to be idolatry. And
a theme we've heard numbers of times.
Yeah, just a few times. It comes up a little bit in biblical texts. Yeah, I mean, it's not super often or anything, but
not super often.
Yeah, it's
just a number of times.
It's in fact almost every week. So
dang.
Yeah. And today we're talking about nature worship. We're going to be talking about worshiping idols in the sense of statues.
For me to know, how, of all the texts that we've read and are planning on reading, how many of them cover what in terms of like one's an idolatry, one is lament, one is a praise, one's like, you know what I mean? They're all, some of them fall into gray zones too, but not the point. I'd just be curious, by number, what's the most? Because it seems like there's a lot of idolatry or idolatrous writing.
So are you asking for
themes,
like
major themes like we've talked about?
Okay, sure. I mean, I would really like to see like a verse by verse kind of breakdown to see like which verses or which
like
books.
just a pie chart, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
Like where's the majority of the anti-idolatry
Sure.
stuff? Yeah,
That'd be fascinating.
yeah.
Because it seems to be maybe number 2 or number 1 of the themes, other than
It's
you
up
know,
there.
Yeah,
It's up there.
it's really high. No mixing of the races. That's maybe a little higher. In
no,
some
no.
ways,
I'd say that one's way lower.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but unless you're specifically looking at like Ezra and Nehemiah, it's way lower.
Okay, so it is that. That's more just about our current reading. See what I mean? It would be helpful to have that pie chart, because how many times have we gone over idolatrous things? It seems like a lot, but it might not be a lot.
I think it's a lot.
Okay.
So like I said, this entire section covers all things idolatry, including the origins of idolatry, according to the writer here, not Solomon, but we'll call him Solomon for for I guess ease, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Pseudo Solomon.
Pseudo Solomon. Yeah, there you go.
I like that.
I guess we could also apply that to other books as well.
We could easily. But I guess it would make more sense just to say Solomon, even though it definitely was not the actual Solomon.
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 Yep.
I like it.
Yep.
I don't really. That's horrible.
That is pretty bad.
I don't actually have any
Who's that Solomon?
good commentary on this section. It's just divided into multiple smaller pieces, but they're all generally about idolatry. We talk about the Egyptians a little bit, which is why that's the background for today. That is Pharaoh and his dying son, the whole last plague and everything. So we can hop into the readings whenever.
All right. Well, there is extensive commentary in here about this section 13:1 through 9.
Okay. Great.
So I will be flipping to it every verse or other verse. So, chapter 13. Born to mindlessness were all those who were inherently ignorant of God and unable to perceive the existent one from visible goods, nor recognize the artificer through intent on his works. So, this is an interesting bit. This artificer bit, where they talk about God, right? Technitis is applied to wisdom in 8:6. The title craftsman.
Technites in the Greek.
Technites.
Tinnitus, got it.
The title craftsman or artificer is never used of God in the Hebrew Bible, though the image of the divine potter is well known. On the other hand, the Stoics had defined physis as an artistically working fire going on its way to create, and Anaxagoras' nous is called technites.
You said noose?
Yeah.
Nous.
Nous.
Okay, so I mean
not Noose, but
okay. Well, I guess I would have to see the exact Greek spelling because
it doesn't have the Greek characters in here.
Right.
Yeah.
But it'll be mind noose.
Yeah. In Philo, technites is very frequently applied to God. A very similar argument to that found in this verse may be found in Epictetus 1:6-7. Quote, assuredly, from the very structure of all made objects, we are accustomed to prove that the work is certainly the product of some artificer and has not been constructed at random. Does then every such work reveal its artificer, but do visible objects and vision and light not reveal him? End quote. According to the Stoic view, the universe is God's fabrica, workshop. So, this is literally the clockmaker, watchmaker.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah.
The clock watcher.
Yeah. The clock stopper. You remember that movie?
No.
Oh,
Wow.
it was bad. It was like a bunch of teenagers who had clocks, and when you watches, and when you pressed a button on it, it would stop time.
I feel like
Simpsons had a Treehouse of Horror episode. with that exact premise. I've never seen the movie, though.
I've also never seen the movie.
I assumed it was a reference, but I never knew. Thanks for telling us about clock stoppers. It really paused what we were doing.
Yeah. Anyways, continuing on to verse 2. But either fire or breath or swift air or starry heaven or torrential water or the celestial lights, cosmic lords, they accounted gods. And there's commentary on this.
Yeah, so this is basically, the natural, just nature being this seen as a god.
Yeah. But on the cosmic lords, Praetanes, whatever, is often applied to the gods, but our author appears to be the first to apply it to the sun and moon. Philo implies the same notion and also uses the verb paratano in a similar context. Quote, but Moses held that the universe was created and is, in a sense, the greatest of commonwealths, having magistrates and subjects. For magistrates, all the heavenly bodies. The said magistrates, however, in his view, have not unconditional powers, but are lieutenants of the one Father of all, and it is by copying the example of his governed exercises according to law and justice over all created beings that they acquit themselves aright, end quote. So, there's these cosmic lords. They're talking about like stars and shit.
This turning to worship these celestial bodies. So you have the nature stuff on Earth, and then the stuff in the sky.
Yeah.
The stuff in space. Of course, they wouldn't have thought that, but the stuff in the sky,
the stuff
is different
like,
stuff. It's not of Earth. It's not the natural in the same way.
Mm. If through delight in the beauty of these things they took them to be gods, let them know how much superior is the master of these things, for it was the primal author of beauty who created them.
Oh, okay. So this is not only is this the watchmaker analogy, this is also the oh man, I forgot what it's called.
It's not quite the first mover.
No, not quite. It's the whole complexity thing. Like, if these things are complex, how much more complex is the thing that created it?
Yeah.
Less. Imagine it's more simple. Wouldn't that be cool?
Yep. If it was through amazement at their dynamic operations, let them apprehend from these how much more powerful is he who shaped them. For from the greatness and beauty of created things is their author correspondingly perceived. Yet little blame attaches to these, for they too perhaps err in spite of their search for God and their desire to find him. What? I'm looking at the commentary here. I'm not aware of the stars erring.
One time they forgot to show up. Whoops.
They're pretty consistent,
Unless it's overcast or something.
Yeah.
What verse was that?
That was verse 6.
Okay. I'm going to see if I have any. I mean, this isn't broken down quite the same way, but so the fundamental argument of the author is that if people are swayed by the beauty of the created universe, so much more should they come to appreciate the creator who stands behind it. The search for the divine reality in the universe among peoples who worship natural phenomena, therefore, receives the author's sympathy and approbation. Philo likewise apportions less blame to those who magnify the subject above the ruler in nature worship than to those who worship dead idols. It doesn't go into that much about them erring.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly, got no commentary on that.
So
maybe it's like a prophetic kind of thing, like astrology.
It could be. Philo, there's a quote from Philo here. But while all who give worship and service to sun and moon and the whole heaven and universe or their chief parts as gods most undoubtedly err by magnifying the subject above the ruler, their offense is less than that of others who have given shape to stocks and stones and silver and gold. So
Okay, so
the error is in judging these cosmic things as being so great, when obviously the person who created the cosmic things is
that
greatest.
explains everything.
Apparently.
Wow.
Yes. For they are engaged in searching out his works and are persuaded by visual impressions, since what they see is beautiful. Yet even they are not to be excused. For if they were so resourceful as to be able to infer the universe, which is in quotes.
weird thing to put in quotes.
Yeah. How is it that they did not sooner discover the master of these things?
Yeah, like He-Man and the Masters of the Universe.
So to infer the universe, i.e., after inferring the existence of a universe, they need only have gone one step further to infer the creator of this universe.
Right, but then you could, keep going one step further.
I infer the creator of the creator
Yeah,
of
exactly.
the universe.
Whatever that is.
It's a double creator. The first mover.
Ah, yes. -1, the mover.
Mm.
Yes.
Well, like Zeus had it.
So we have another section coming up.
Yes, we do. And it's 10 through 19.
Yes. So, the more serious nature of idol worship, because of course we just got done talking about how those were lesser, right? Those idols, those works of hands, those human works are way lesser. Like it's that doesn't make any sense. Like at least I can understand why you worship these heavenly bodies, but why worship these dead things like rocks and sticks? So the more serious nature of idol worship is signaled at the outset of the critique. Miserable are those who worship dead things. This critique against idol worship continues a long tradition in the biblical writings. The making of idols counters the supreme prohibition against creating a graven image. The author's ridicule of the making and worshiping of idols is formulated in a manner of similar passages to that found in other scriptural passages, and we've covered so many of them. Like I'm not even gonna list these off. Like we've covered a lot of them.
So there are some interesting notes for this upcoming verse that I'll get into once we get through it. But wretched are they, and on dead things are their hopes, who designated as gods the works of human hands, gold and silver, artfully contrived, and animal representations, or useless stone, a product of ancient craftsmanship. So there's some notes on this. Philo of Byblos defined the Bethels, rough stones regarded as the residence of a god, as lithoi and psychoi, or animate stones. Quote, they became in time the origin both of altars and of iconic statues, passing through gradations of rude shaping. At first unshaped single rocks or cairns, we find them developed in the majority of earlier Aegean cult scenes into pillars, monolithic or built up.
So these would be like the high places.
Mm-hmm. There's more though. Aphrodite, Astarte, was worshipped in the shape of a conical stone at Paphos, and a black aerolite covered with projections and depressions to which a symbolic meaning was attributed, represented Elagabal, the Baal of Amesh in Syria, and was transferred from Emesa to Rome by the 14-year-old emperor Elagabalus in 219. Furthermore, there's an interesting bit here. According to J. Goldstein, Antiochus IV had ordered meteorites to be affixed to the temple altar as objects to be worshipped.
Yeah, I think we remember covering that.
Mm-hmm. And also Pausanias 7:22-4, quote, at Pherae in Achaia, close to the image of Hermes, stand square stones, about 30 in number. These the people of Pherae adore, calling each by the name of some god. At a more remote period, all the Greeks alike worshipped uncarved stones instead of images of the gods.
Huh. Stonehenge?
Stonehenge. Could be.
It's a completely different place.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
just
not
throwing
in
out
Greece.
the idea of uncarved stone, not that this is that.
Yeah, we did bring up like pillars of stone and like stacks of stones in other videos.
Yes.
For sure.
So, yeah, interesting stuff.
Oh, hey, by the way, we got a lot of commands.
Yeah.
So, we're just going to quickly, post a list of those by using a command. So, you can just have some fun, I suppose, with those. They'll pop up, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.
Sometimes Nightbot doesn't want to do anything,
Yeah, sometimes Nightbot sucks.
but it chose to this time. So,
Congratulations, Nightbot.
So the author of Wisdom highlights in a similar manner the lifeless qualities of the statue. Of course, we covered that. They're dead. At this point, however, instead of using the metaphor of the... Okay, so he goes into a metaphor about bodily senses. And then he continues to play up that whole deadness thing, and that's the weakness of it. It should be pointed out that in Greek and Hellenistic circles, there was both a critique of the naivete of idol worship and a defense for a more sophisticated view of an idol's function in prayer. The author's critique presumed a parody of idol worship. The lifeless quality of images and statues of worship was a subject of scorn for Heraclitus and Timaeus of Tauromenium. But Plato defended the use of idols to remind humans of the living gods. The idol is to the living god what the shadow is to the object in Plato's allegory of the shadows in the cave. Quote, the ancient laws of all men concerning the gods are twofold. Some of the gods whom we honor, we see clearly, but of others, we set up statues as images. And we believe that when we worship these, lifeless though they be, the living gods beyond feel great goodwill toward us in gratitude. So his argument was like, hey, yeah, there are gods that interact and we can see them all the time, apparently. But these other gods...
Lightning bolts and rain and stuff could be considered that even in Greek times.
Right, exactly.
So moving past that, yeah.
But then, yeah, some other stuff, like I suppose like more abstract ideas, like justice, something like that, would be worshipped through an idol.
Yeah, kind of like how we have in the United States, Lady Justice.
Yeah, yeah.
They even put a blindfold on her because, otherwise she'd be too overpowered.
Yeah. For granting some skilled worker in wood has sawn a ready tree, skillfully scraped off all the bark, and with cunning art shaped a vessel for everyday use, while the castings of his manufacture he used up for the preparation of his food and had his fill. There's a note. I mean, obviously, this is talking about cutting down a tree and carving something, but for the preparation of his food and he had his fill. See Isaiah 44:16 and the Apocalypse of Abraham 5.
Oh, that's still a fun one that we have to probably should read.
Well, it says here that in the Apocalypse of Abraham, Abraham is commanded by his father, take and collect the splinters of the wood out of which I made gods of pine wood before thou camest, and make ready for me the food of the midday meal. While collecting the splinters, Abraham finds a little god called Abarisat, probably Bar Ishta, son of fire, and throws him too into the fire with instructions to pay careful attention that the fire not die down until he returns. So, interesting bit there. But taking one of these useless castings, a crooked piece of wood streaked with knots, he diligently carved it in his spare moments, fashioned it with leisurely skill, and made it into the likeness of a human image. Or else he likened it to a worthless creature, coating it with vermilion, dyeing its surface red, and smearing over every blemish in it. Then, making for it a worthy shrine, he fixed it in a wall and secured it with iron, thus taking precautions that it might not fall, in the knowledge that it is powerless to fend for itself, for it is an image and in need of help.
Okay, so yeah, he turns it into a joke, but you know what? It's not like there's no biblical basis for that. We talked about all this stuff against idolatry, but that specific idea more demonstrably, I suppose, can be found in when they took the ark to the Philistine temple, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's when the Philistines took the ark, and like the statue was just completely falling apart, and yeah, it needed help. Couldn't do it on its own because it was a lowly statue.
Apparently, on coating it with vermilion, the faces of the wooden images of Dionysus are ornamented with red paint.
Oh, okay.
You know, they did specifically call out Dionysus earlier in the text.
I think they did, yeah.
Yeah. They're obviously not fans.
Well, the guy's drunk.
Aren't we all?
No.
Just shut up, Chris. You're drunk.
No.
He's wasted.
He's so drunk. He's drunker than any of us have ever been.
Oh, well, I don't know if that's true. Maybe he's drunk for longer than any of us have ever been.
I'm just going to keep changing the cameras now. Screw you.
That's something a drunk person would do. Oh.
All right.
Anyways, yet praying to it about his possessions, his marriage, and his children, he feels no shame in addressing this lifeless object. For health, he invokes that which is feeble. For life, he prays to a corpse. For succor, he beseeches one totally inexperienced. For a journey...
I'm sorry. For what?
Succor.
Oh, okay.
Succor.
Okay.
For a journey...
I thought that was going somewhere completely different.
No,
okay.
no. He's not giving it $5.
Oh, wow.
So criticism of images as lifeless is already implied in the famous utterance of Heraclitus.
Oh, yeah, we covered how, the lifeless quality of images and statues of worship. Yeah, so he was scorning that one. Yeah, Heraclitus.
Yeah. Timaeus of Tauromenium
Cover that one too.
used the adjective apsychos as a term of reproach for statues of the gods. Philo similarly writes, "Let no one then who has a soul worship a soulless thing." Plato in his Laws 931a, quote, "But of other gods we set up statues as images, and we believe that when we worship these, lifeless though they be, the living gods beyond feel great goodwill toward us and gratitude," end quote. Epictetus 2:820, quote, "And the Athena of Pheidias, when once it had stretched out its hand and received the Nike, Nike, it's capitalized, Nike, upon it, stands in this..."
It'd be way more useful if we had the Greek spelling, but for the term, you keep saying psychos or something?
Apsycho.
Okay, well, I think, I could be very wrong, but I think that the root word for that is psukos. I think. I could be wrong.
It's like psychology. PSY.
I get that, but it would still be psukos.
Okay.
Or psuke, I'm not sure. But then the prefix a means not.
Right. So without a mind or without a soul.
Mindlessly.
Yeah.
Mindlessly.
So it should be noted that the Egyptian view of their idols was considerably more sophisticated than it would appear from our author's polemical description. A ritual of opening the mouth was performed on the statues while they were still in the sculptor's workshop or the gold house.
Or breathlessly, maybe. Psuke. Yeah. Because it would be more like breath or soul, right? Because there's pneuma, which I don't know, it's really weird. Pneuma and psuke are very close in meaning. There's like the life, the life force, I guess. That would be psuke. And then pneuma is supposed to be the actual soul, like when we classically think of a soul.
So they have their Atman and their prana as separate things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have the mind, body, and soul problem.
So what I would say for a psuke would be, actually that would be lifelessly. That would be lifelessly.
So in this Egyptian practice, the deity was thought to be in the heavens and only to take up a temporary residence in his image after the necessary rite had been performed. For other examples of rituals for the animation of images among the Hindus, the Africans of the West Coast, the New Zealanders.
We did have a whole video on the Egyptian afterlife.
We did.
Yeah.
And our viewers can check that out after they watch this.
Yeah.
So, this is a common thing across cultures, basically.
Yeah.
All over the place. All over the planet.
Well, I mean, it makes sense, right?
Does it?
Well, I mean, it makes sense from like, we want closure when somebody dies. And
so you make a carving of them for their soul to inhabit?
I mean, if you already have ideas of an afterlife, because that's what people hope for a lot of the time. I don't. I hope that's the complete end for me.
Back to the void for you.
Yeah, I sure hope so. Please end this existence. When you have those kinds of ideas, you could, of course, you can form these kinds of, these more detailed ideas, I suppose. Yeah.
Okay. For a journey, that which is incapable of using its legs, for means of livelihood, business, and success of his handiwork, he asks for strength from that whose hands are entirely impotent. And also strength here in the notes. Eudranea is first found here. And elsewhere, only in a Phrygian inscription of the 2nd/3rd centuries CE, in which vigor is attributed to Artemis. So,
fantastic.
Yeah. And that's the end of chapter 13. If you're enjoying the stream so far, give us a like, share, comment, subscribe. Send it to all your friends on all your social medias, all your TikTokers.
All the TikTokers in our audience.
All on.
And your yik-yackers.
What?
Do people still use yik-yak?
That's right. That was a thing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I sure hope not. That was weird.
Your Reddit channel.
Yeah. I suppose you could post on Reddit and all that stuff.
Yeah. Your, I don't know, fucking 8chan threads.
All right.
Whatever you do.
So we can hop into chapter 14 then. If you have any commentary, you can feel free to say something. I did see some Greek in there, and I don't know if you could pronounce that word with their transliteration because it's very, very poor.
Well, in what, Eerdmans or?
In the NIV.
Oh, okay.
I mean, if you want, I can start reading.
Why don't you go ahead and start reading?
So we're on chapter 14, and you can stop me whenever, honestly.
Okay.
Again, what?
You said whenever.
Okay, you did stop me.
All right, that was fun.
Again, one setting out on a voyage and about to travel through savage seas cries out for aid to a piece of wood more unsound than the craft that carries him. So, like, they'll take any help they can get, basically.
Yeah, the critique of worshiping a wooden idol focuses on the contrast between entrusting one's survival on the sea to a piece of wood and calling upon an idol made of wood that is more fragile than the ship itself.
Yeah, so desperation, I suppose, is one of the themes that they're talking about. Or just, a really stupid decision also. Where people would just try anything. For the latter was invented by the drive to obtain a livelihood, and wisdom the artificer built it. So that's interesting. So we're getting back into wisdom here, and wisdom is also being called an artificer, which makes sense from the stuff that we have talked about in relation to wisdom.
Yes, the artistry involved in the fashioning of the ship is praised as the work of wisdom, the artisan. It is God's providence that steers the ship through the laws governing the winds and the currents.
But it is your providence, Father, that pilots it. For you have made a road through the sea and a safe path through the waves, showing that you can save from all, and that even without navigational skill, a man may put to sea. So you can do anything with God and wisdom, obviously. You need wisdom.
Yeah, they may be talking about Noah here.
That makes sense.
In 3 through 7.
I mean, I suppose it's very, very possible. But also, I mean, yeah, I guess I can see that, but it's not really necessary. I mean, ships in bad waters, that's very common imagery in general. Like, that's a really way to get across that I am in a bad situation. I'm just trying to stay alive here. So, it is your will that the works of your wisdom not lie idle, and therefore men trust lives to the flimsiest plank, and passing through the surf on a raft come safely through. So, kind of pulling up more of the imagery that we just talked about.
Yeah.
So I just want to check something on verse 5 there.
Yeah, God supplements the natural disposition of human intelligence with a providence that brings to completion the desired goal of safety, in verse 5. By highlighting the wood in the ark as a means of rescue, the author is drawing a distinction between the goodness of the materials of creation and the corruption of misusing those materials to make idols. God is being praised for the gift of the wood that sustains human beings in precarious moments on the sea. The reflection takes on the quality of thankful praise to God for the wonders of creation, for God's providential care in and through creation.
So the deity who does not wish that the works of his wisdom lie idle supplements man's limited resources, thus allowing him to hazard a path through trackless seas. Similarly, it was God's... Oh, yeah, that's right. Before we were talking about God's hand piloting, right? Or the hand of wisdom, I suppose.
Right. Because he has control over the laws.
Yeah. Piloting hand that brought Noah through the flood. Most commentators, however, understand the words me arga enai to mean that God wishes to allow for a better distribution of nature's products, thereby avoiding unnecessary waste and affording a fuller utilization of Earth's riches. The same notion is suggested by Euripides. Quote, and commerce oversee that by exchange a country may obtain the goods it lacks. Yes. Trade.
They also refer to God as Father earlier.
Yes.
So there are occurrences of God's being addressed directly as Father in the text representing the Davidic covenant, Psalm 89:26, whereby the king is understood to be the adopted son of God, 2 Samuel 7:14. The closest parallels to the wisdom text to God's being called Father in direct speech is in Isaiah 63:16. For you are our Father, you, O Lord, are our Father, our Redeemer from old is your name. And in Sirach 23:1, O Lord, Father and Master of my life. It was common in rabbinical stories for God to be addressed as a father as well. Philo and Josephus employ the metaphor of father for God in a universal manner, as does the author of Wisdom. The ambiance, therefore, was already very fertile indeed for Jesus of Nazareth to address God through the personal designation of God as Abba, Father.
Continuing on here, verse 6, I think. For in the beginning, too, while haughty giants were perishing, the hope of the world escaped on a raft, and piloted by your hand, bequeathed to the world the germ for a new generation. So
this is a reference to the descendants of the fallen angels, which we covered in Enoch. If you want to check that out.
Yeah, the giants were the first generation.
Yeah, Eerdmans comments, the allusion in 14:6a to the Jewish form of the myth of the revolt of the Titans reflects the version known in other late Second Temple period texts, Sirach 16:7, Baruch 3:26-28, 3rd Maccabees 2:4, rather than the toned-down version, which appears in Genesis 6:1-4.
Yeah, and speaking of all these different versions, there's a lot of terminology that is reminiscent here of other things. So one of them, haughty giants, Judith, which I guess we may read after we're done with the wisdom. It says, it mentions the giants in there. And of course we read, in Jubilees, Sirach, Enoch, of course. And let's see what else. The Ark of Noah bearing the universe. That's where the hope of the world comes from 4th Maccabees 15:31. So lots of lots of stuff getting brought up. Lots of imagery, and maybe not imagery, epithets, I guess, closer.
Yeah, let me know when you finish verse 11.
Okay, we'll do. For blessed is the plank through which righteousness has arrived, but the idol made by hand is itself accursed, and he that made it, because... Okay, hold on. So not only is the idol accursed, and he that made it, because he made it, the other because through... though perishable, it was called a god. So it is accursed because people think it's a god. I feel like that's unfair to the rocks and the other stuff. Why you got to curse it? They didn't have any decision in that.
Dude,
Yeah, what about pantheists? Do they mean that everything's cursed?
Oh boy, yeah, that's a good point.
Ugh.
Just everything else is cursed. Wow. What a bad situation to be in there.
Yeah.
Huh? For equally hateful to God are both the godless man, oh no, and his godlessness, oh no.
Oh, no.
That's you.
So, when
That's
they
me.
say, love the sinner, hate the sin, they're full of shit, man. God hates them both.
Yes, that is what it says there.
At least according to this Apocrypha.
Yeah.
Which is in certain...
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
Catholic. Yeah.
A big one.
We'll get into it once you finish verse 11.
Okay. Both the deed and the perpetrator will be punished. And you said you wanted me to finish verse 11?
Yeah.
Okay. Divine judgment will therefore also overtake the idols of the nations, for though part of God's creation, they have become an abomination, a stumbling for men, and a snare for the feet of idols.
So, the language for verse 11 comes from Jeremiah 10:15. The author has in mind the kind of eschatological appearance of God at the Last Judgment, which is reflected in 3:7-11 in chapter 5. Also, Sirach 36, 1 through 22. Now, I'm going to read quite a bit of the NIV commentary.
Okay, because I need to drink something.
Yeah. It is quite understandable how the early church, which on occasion favored an allegorical interpretation of Scripture as exemplified in Origen of Alexandria, recognized in this statement a reference to the blessedness of the cross of Christ. They're talking about the wood stuff that occurred.
Yeah. Actually, I think that's where the word pops up, the Greek one.
Yeah, so we're going to get into it. Ambrose comments on Wisdom 14, 7 through 8, by juxtaposing the matter that is considered blessed with the matter that's considered accursed. He explains the reference to wood as representing the cross of Christ and the reference to the work of human hands as representing wooden idols. The New Testament employed the same Greek word to designate cross that can be translated as wood in general or even tree, which I guess is xylon.
No, it's a xulon.
Xulon.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they spelled it Xylon.
I know how they spelled it.
They should have spelled
Horrible
it
transliteration.
KSYOOLON.
I think it should have had
Xulon.
more L's.
The tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil are represented by the same Greek word in the creation text, Genesis 2:9. The book of Revelation also employs the same word for references to the tree of life. The wisdom author had already employed the same word in an evident reference to the Ark of Noah. Since there was an evident interpolation to the cross in Psalm 96:10 in the Septuagint, the Lord reigns from the wood, which the oldest Greek manuscripts had already expunged, it was thought that perhaps the text of Wisdom 14:7 was also a Christian insert. The Muratori canon.
That's I think that is one of the oldest canons. One of the oldest canon lists.
Yeah, circa 180 to 190 CE.
Yeah, really old.
Super old. Includes the Wisdom of Solomon in its list of New Testament writings. And this could very well have been the verse that caused the compiler to include it on the oldest list of New Testament writings that we have. However, as reflecting a reference to the Ark of Noah, the verse fits well into the argument of the author, which lauds the matter through which human beings come to salvation and to justice. The author's firm assertion of the health and beauty of creation perhaps elicited this emphasis on the integrity of matter itself to distinguish the matter of wood from the idols made of wood that are accursed. They go on to say, in contrast to the blessedness of the wood that saves, the author declares the idols made by human hands to be accursed, in verses 8 through 10. Both the makers of idols and the idols themselves fall under the disapproval of God. Since the author has declared that all creatures stand under God's providential care, a distinction is made between the material of the idol and its function of snaring human souls and trapping the feet of the gullible. Human beings, through their deliberate choices, have transformed the material that is part of God's creation into something that is not.
Whoa.
Yeah. Just as responsibility for bringing on death lies squarely on the shoulders of human beings, according to the first part of the book, so too does the responsibility for transforming something blessed into a thing accursed rest on the idol makers.
Yeah, so I find it very interesting that the word that's used there, xulon, was, in the Christian era, was interpreted to, I wouldn't say a prophecy, but at least a link for Christ to the Old Testament, right? So I find it very interesting there, but although in the context of the book, it's very clear, or maybe not. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it's very clear that it would be Noah, right? They're talking about the boat.
Yeah, they're very clearly talking about the boat.
Yeah. So although this author had something else in mind, the canon lists would have been thinking of it in a much different light.
On the basis of a single Greek term.
Potentially.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, the rest of it does kind of line up with a lot of the stuff that we've covered on idolatry specifically.
Yeah.
So more broadly, you could put it into that canon. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's continue.
All right. So verse 12. Ooh, the origin and so origin and evil. Origin and evil. Consequences of idolatry. Okay. So we're going to talk about both of those.
Yep.
For the invention of idols is the beginning of fornication, and their discovery is life's ruin.
Yeah. So to
This sounds like does this sound like Enoch stuff?
well, along with other Jewish writings,
This sounds like Enoch stuff.
see Jubilees 11:4-5.
That's one.
The Wisdom of Solomon assumes that idolatry was not primeval, but had a beginning in time. To account for its origin, the author derived one explanation from observation of some religious practices current in his Greco-Roman environment,
Orgy.
while another he adopted indirectly from the theories of Euhemerus of Messene, circa 300 BC. Infant mortality levels were very high at this time, and various methods of assuaging the pain and grief caused had sprung up. Some amounted almost to deification of the child. Euhemerus had accounted for the origin of the Greek gods by arguing that they were deified kings worshipped after their deaths by their grateful subjects.
Yeah, so that's the exact same Euhemerus that Carrier talks about a lot.
Yeah. This euhemeristic explanation of the existence of the gods was already known in Jewish circles before the Wisdom of Solomon, as can be seen from the allusions to it in the Epistle of Aristeas and also Pseudo-Eupolemus. Euhemerus's explanations would have gained added currency from the apotheosis of Alexander and his successors. And if the Wisdom of Solomon was written in the imperial age, from what was beginning to be attributed to the Roman emperors.
Oh no. All right. They did not exist from the beginning, nor will they exist forever. For they came into the world through the empty illusions of men, and therefore a sudden end was devised for them. Okay, so they're already talking like this stuff isn't around any longer.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna check on some of these verses here. So empty illusions is an Epicurean term. See, I don't know what this one is. KD, don't know what that is. I guess I should check that.
KD.
Yeah,
It's Katie's
I'm
opinion.
gonna check that. But they quote from it saying, "Such pleasures are due to idle imagination, and it is not owing to their own nature that they fail to be dispelled, but owing to the empty imaginings of the man, i.e., a mental picture of some subject which does not really contribute to pleasure, causes us to desire it." Okay, so maybe this is from a certain text called Empty Illusions. I don't know, because the Greek word it looks like, at least from this transliteration, is kenodoskia. That's what it looks like there. And then there's a idle imagination is translated from kenen doxan. So I'm guessing those are the root words there, but moreover, kenodoxia is a philosophical term with deep roots in Epicurus's epistemology. For the latter had especially cautioned against the use of kenoi. Oh man, I hate these transliterations. Just give me the Greek, please. Phthongoi, or words devoid of meaning. It was therefore an eminently apt term for the biblical conception of idolatry, which, as Kaufman had pointed out long ago, was a fetishistic one, and therefore saw in the idols objects completely empty and devoid of meaning.
Well, the language.
Great guy.
Yes. The language that introduces the explanation for idol worship reflects the author's previous concerns and explanations. The essential goodness of all that exists in the entrance of idol worship into the world. Since God loves all that exists, the author reiterates how idols did not exist at the beginning. God is not their creator. They entered the cosmos through human vanity. Therefore, their end is assured. The relationship between idol worship and fornication is one that the author adapts primarily from prophetic teaching. The Greek word representing fornication, porneia, refers to various forms of sexual disorders.
Oh.
Yeah. The corresponding Hebrew term is often used to designate more precisely the worship of false gods, as is the case with the wisdom author. The image of marital infidelity is implied in the prophetic use of the metaphor of fornication with idols. Infidelity to the faithful God of the covenant is understood as a breach of the covenant agreement. The author is adapting the uniquely Israelite understanding of fidelity to the one God for its application to all humanity in the explanation of the origin of idol worship.
Sex bad. Okay. So verse 15. A father consumed with untimely grief, having made an image of the child so swiftly taken from him, now honored as a god, what was once a human corpse, and handed down to his dependents mysteries and initiation rites. Mm-hmm. Ooh.
So this is
spooky.
A reference to that euhemerus idea.
Yeah. And like I was saying before, when someone passes away, this is like a way of closure. But I guess he's giving them this explanation for you've turned them into a god. That's how your god came to be. It's a person who died.
Yeah.
Then, confirmed by the passage of time, the impious custom was maintained as a law. Again, at the command of rulers, graven images came to be worshipped. When men were unable to do honor to these princes in their presence because of the remoteness of their dwelling, they formed a likeness of the distant face and made a palpable image of the king they wished to revere.
So many of the clear examples...
That happened in so many cultures.
Yeah. But many of the clear examples of the Greco-Roman practice of idol worship are posterior to the Book of Wisdom. For example, there's the cult of Antinous, which the Emperor Hadrian set up in memory of his young friend who drowned tragically in Egypt.
Against minds or against thought? Because that's what that would mean, Antinous.
Well, it's N-O-O-S, not N-O-U-S.
Oh, wait, hold on. Let me see.
This is also a Roman guy.
Oh, okay, never
Hadrian,
mind. Okay.
not Greek.
Whoops. Whoopsies.
There's a story from the 4th century CE that explains how a statue became an idol that's very similar to the case envisioned in Wisdom. In that story, an Egyptian named Seraphanes sets up a statue to his dead son at his house in order to ease the family's grief at their loss. The family members decorate the statue to please the father, and eventually the household slaves begin to flee to it for protection. In this way, a statue honoring the memory of a son was understood to have become eventually the object of cultic worship. The author adds to this critique of the origin of such idol worship the falsity of the artist's embellishment of the idol. Plato had expressed a certain ambivalence toward art that was motivated primarily by the tendency of artists to embellish their subjects.
Yeah, I have that too.
Yeah. Well, for Plato, such a tendency led to a falsification of the true form and represented an aberration from true art itself.
Of course, Plato didn't like it.
Right, because Plato believes in this abstract realm of forms, and this would just be further from representing the form of what you're trying to represent.
How could you?
Philo added the same argument found in Wisdom, which ridicules the artist's embellishment of the subject in his critique of idol worship. Quote, Further, too, they have brought in sculpture and painting to cooperate in the deception in order that with the colors and shapes and artistic qualities wrought by their fine workmanship, they may enthrall the spectators and so beguile the two leading senses, sight and hearing." End quote. The attraction to works of art is viewed as a snare that entraps humans to worship idols made of stone or wood, which will occur in verse 21 when you get to it.
Okay, I'm only like halfway through a different verse because this is a very long verse. Oh yeah, he goes into that actually very soon. So made a palpable image of the king they wish to revere, so that they might earnestly flatter the absent one as though present. But the ambition of the artist impelled even those who had no knowledge of the matter to a higher pitch of worship. For he, in his desire perhaps to please the ruler, skillfully forced the likeness into a more beautiful form. Yep, there's that perversion of the form, I suppose. But the masses, drawn by the charm of his workmanship, now took for an object of worship him who was but lately honored as a man. Wow. So this is how gods are made. People die, and then someone is very artistically remembering them, and then the people are like, that's our God.
Mm-hmm. Let me know when you finish verse 21.
Okay. "And this became a trap for human life, that men enslaved either by misfortune or tyranny bestowed on stocks and stones the name that may not be associated with others." That's the end of 21.
Okay, so in 1421c, some commentators have seen an allusion to the practice of not pronouncing the divine name Yahweh. But idolaters were hardly likely to be calling their gods by such a name, and the more universal term theos is almost certainly what the author had in mind. 1422b, well, you'll get into that.
I will. Okay.
Yeah.
So verse 22 then?
Yeah, it contains an allusion to the Pax Romana.
Great. "And so they were not content to err concerning the knowledge of God, but though living in the midst of a great war rooted in their ignorance, they call such monstrous evils peace."
So what follows here in these upcoming verses,
I think they're talking about probably all the riots that happened during Pax Romana. So even though like Rome wasn't technically at war with anyone, there was a lot of stuff going on inside the Roman Empire.
mm-hmm.
Most likely.
Yeah, but what follows in the upcoming verses is a list of vices that arise from not having knowledge of God. The passage is reminiscent to the speech of the wicked in the first part of the book, who perpetuated injustice against the just one. The wicked have no knowledge of God, and this lack of knowledge blinds them to the gifts of justice and wisdom. Whereas the author's presentation of the wicked's aberration to injustice was subtle, with a progressive and sinister momentum, the author's invectives are unrestrained with respect to idol worshippers. The list of vices follows a much-used literary device in which disorders and aberrations are accumulated to highlight the perversions that stem from a single cause. In the Greek Apocalypse of Baruch is a series of disorders attributed to the fall and to drunkenness. Quote, "Brother does not have mercy on brother, nor father on son, nor child on parents, but by means of the fall through wine come forth all these: murder, adultery, fornication, perjury, theft, and similar things."
So for all these years, people have been just trying to find the root of all evil.
Yeah.
It's idols.
No, the other guy just said it was booze.
Oh, booze is idols. There you go.
Yeah.
Solve that.
But
Booze idols, yep.
the point being that this is a common thing.
Yeah. So verse 23. for either performing ritual murders of children or secret mysteries or frenzied revels connected with strange laws, they keep neither their lives nor marriages pure, but one either slays his neighbor insidiously or pains him by adultery. So, a lot of stuff to unpack there, but I guess the entirety of verse 23 and verse 24 are meant to, like, here are the things that idol worshipers do.
Mm-hmm.
They cheat on people and they kill each other and they and they murder a whole lot of children. And of course the secret mysteries, I'm guessing it's just like some cult stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a note on the secret mysteries. Philo inveighs against the mysteries with equal vigor. Quote, furthermore, he banishes from the sacred legislation the lore of occult rites and mysteries, and all such imposture. He would not have those who were bred in such a commonwealth as ours take part in mummeries, whatever that means, and clinging on to mystic fables, despise the truth, and pursue things which have taken night and darkness for their province.
Yeah. So the critique of idolatry includes an attack on the secret mystery cults. In the second part of the book, the author implied a critique of the mystery cults by deliberately presenting personified wisdom as transparent and open. Likewise, Solomon was presented as having transmitted his knowledge acquired through friendship with wisdom openly, ungrudgingly, and without restriction. This open style of pedagogy on the part of personified wisdom, and exemplified in the persona of Solomon, stands in stark contrast to the secretive initiation rites common to mystery cults in the Greco-Roman world.
Yeah, and then frenzied revels, of course, that's big parties, sometimes orgies, ritual murder of children. Dionysus' mother's sister is said to have killed her own infant son, Milicertes, in a fit of madness. This son of Enos was worshipped on the island of Tenedos as Palimon. And since children were sacrificed to him, he was called the child killer. There you go.
Very Molech.
Very good commentary.
Yes.
He Molech'd all over that.
Oh boy.
Either way, it's ripping these families apart.
Yeah. Let me know when you finish 26.
Okay. All is confusion, bloody murder, deceitful theft, corruption, treachery, tumult, perjury, agitation of decent men, ingratitude, soul defilement, interchange of sex roles,
Whoa.
irregular marriages, adultery, and debauchery.
Wait. Flip to your commentary for the interchange of sex roles.
Yeah, let's see what this
I wasn't aware that they were doing sexual reassignment surgery in
Okay, here we go. Interchange of sex roles. Again, wish this wasn't Greek. So the Greek is genesos and nalage. That's the best I can do with this.
Yay.
So there's a reference to something like this in the Testament of Naphtali 3:4. Quote, that ye become not as Sodom, which changed the order of nature. And then there's also Romans 1:26. Quote, their women exchanged natural relations for unnatural. Geneseos, as Goodrick remarks, is the wrong word. We would expect genus. Okay. So it's not necessary. I don't think it's necessarily like sexual reassignment and stuff like that.
Right.
But
It might be somebody cross-dressing or pretending to be the other gender.
It could be like a cross-dressing. Now, maybe it is like a
this-
trans thing, but it's not like an actual reassignment surgery.
Right.
But
this was a factor in some different religious systems. So, like, for example, you have Loki, who in Norse mythology, Loki comes to Earth as a human female and gives birth to a child while being a human female. And the other gods in the Lokasena poem, they like bash him for it. So this was not unheard of in mythology.
right. And then furthermore, irregular marriages, the adjective ataktos is used of sensual excess and may mean irregular or inordinate. So could mean gay, could mean I don't know if it'd mean poly in this case. I don't know how stuff specifically worked at that specific time.
I'm gonna marry this rock.
Yeah, perhaps that. But all it means is just like unusual, I suppose.
So they're calling them queer.
Yes. So here we have stuff that's anti-queer, obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
And I mean that's pretty much all I can say on that one,
I
right?
bet the author of Wisdom of Solomon would not be happy about current American culture.
No, he would not. And then he's like, that's not even, like, could you imagine if he saw, like, a trans person? He'd be like, that's not even what I was thinking of, like, in sex roles. Like, I was thinking of, like, them just doing the thing that the other sex does.
Yeah, jeez. Oh, whoa.
Yeah. That's the wisdom of Solomon. Or that's what Solomon would say, right? That's what the author would say here.
I think that in some Middle Eastern cultures, they did have more than two like gender things at some points.
Yeah, there are cultures with like, and that's speaking outside of Western culture,
Right?
like there are cultures with like plenty of different genders. Like even the Native Americans had like a separate, like a third gender.
Yeah, there's like two-spirit in some Native American groups. They
Yeah.
have different names.
Yeah,
in
yeah.
different tribes.
Continuing on here, verse 27.
Oh, hold on.
Oh yeah, you had probably some commentary on all that, huh?
The theme of mistaking war for peace, like confusing.
Oh,
good
that
and
was
evil.
earlier on, yeah.
Well, they also bring it up in verse 26 is confusing the perception of good, right? So the theme of mistaking war for peace was immortalized in the famous epithet of Tacitus: to plunder, butcher, steal these things, they misname empire. They make a desolation, and they call it peace. Tacitus was criticizing the Pax Romana, which was often achieved through a brutal exercising of power through violence. For the victors, the outcome is called peace, but for the victims, it is sheer desolation.
Yeah.
Just as injustice blinds the wicked from perceiving the plan of God, so also the lack of knowledge of God in idol worship confuses the perception of the good. Idol worshippers consider the internal and external disorders that throw them into great strife as peace.
I mean, it worked for them. I guess that's about it, though. For the worship of the unspeakable idols is the beginning, cause, and end of every evil. For they either marry to the point of madness, or prophesy lies, or live unrighteously, or readily perjure themselves. Placing their trust in lifeless idols, they expect no punishment when swearing falsely. On both accounts will justice pursue them, because in their devotion to the idols they thought wrongly about God, and in their contempt for religion swore deceitful lies. For it is not the power of those by whom they swear, but the judgment of them that sin, that ever proceeds against the transgression of the wicked. So they did this to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And is there more to that? Or I think that's actually the end of the chapter.
Yeah, the 1431a is concerned to emphasize that it is not the power of the gods represented by the idols which brings retribution on perjurers, while the Greek of 31b evokes the personification of justice, relentlessly pursuing wrongdoers. So that was from Eerdmans.
All right, so unless you have any more commentary, I'm going to hand this off to you. If you are enjoying the stream so far, please make sure to drop a like, subscribe if you haven't, because liking the videos really does help. It helps with the algorithm. Basically, it's like, oh, hey, people are watching this thing. It's getting a lot of engagement. Let's drive more views to that thing. So, yeah, do that. Please and thank you. Love you forever.
And this next chapter is not exceptionally long. It's broken up into 3 different sections, though, which is 1 through 6, 7 through 13, and 14 through 19.
Yeah.
So let's get into it. Chapter 15. But you, our
Burger
God.
King foot lettuce.
Ugh,
Do you remember that?
yeah,
Yeah,
I,
why,
though?
I
though?
remember that.
Good.
But you, our God, are true, good and true, slow to anger, and governing with all with mercy. I guess.
I disagree.
For even if we sin, we're yours, since we are cognizant of your might. But knowing that we are reckoned yours, we will not sin. That's not.
So a lot of this stuff is actually coming from Exodus 6, or sorry, Exodus 34:6. So 3 of the 4 descriptive expressions in the wisdom text are found in the Greek text of Exodus. So we have a true and faithfulness, patient, slow to anger, ruling all things in mercy or merciful. The first adjective, kind, Christos, is not found in 34:6, but it is frequently used in the Psalms as a translation of the Hebrew word for good, tob. Moreover, the same root in the adverbial form was used by the wisdom author to describe the manner in which wisdom guides the cosmos. Wisdom guides all things well.
Yes. For to know you is the sum of righteousness, and to recognize your power is the root of immortality.
Oh, boy.
So, the root of immortality.
Oh, so we were talking about the root of all evil before, and now we're talking about the root of immortality.
Yes. So the rabbis see the special manifestation of God's power in his ability to resurrect the dead. The second benediction of the Amidah, known as Geburot, or mighty deeds, concludes with Blessed art thou, O Lord, who revives the dead. So
It'll be useful for all those dead things
yeah,
that people are worshiping. Maybe he wants to, I don't know, bring them back, make them not dead. But then it wouldn't be idol worship, would it? Because they're alive now.
Yeah, they would just be living people worship. For neither did the malicious inventiveness of men lead us astray, nor the sterile labor of painters, a shape splashed with varied colors, the sight of which excites fools to lust for the unbreathing form of a dead image. So we've had references to things like that before in the chapters just today. But in the commentary here, it says, the writer is thinking of his own period. The consensus among the rabbis of the 3rd century was that all idolatrous impulses had been eradicated from Israel as early as the beginning of the Second Temple period. For this view, there is parallel evidence in Judith 8:18. Quote, for there is not risen in our generations, nor is there today a tribe, a family, a clan, or a city that worships idols made by human hands as there was once in olden times. Hecataeus of Abdera praised Moses for his non-anthropomorphic notion of God, quote, but he, Moses, had no images whatsoever of the gods made for them, being of the opinion that God is not in human form, end quote. Tacitus grudgingly allows that Jewish worship.
He did, however, set up a serpent for some reason.
Yeah.
I kind of forget why he did that. I don't even know. I don't,
Balls.
no, I don't think we had like all the commentaries when we were reading that, so it wasn't. Well, maybe we'll go back and look at that because that was interesting. It was weird. Why would you do that, Moses?
Why would he do?
Maybe it was a textual thing. But either way, that'd be an interesting thing to look into.
In love with evil and worthy of such hopes are they who make these things, they who long for them, and they who worship them. That's the end of that section. Now we're in the second section, 7 through 13. For a potter, laboriously tempering soft clay, molds each single article for our service. But out of the selfsame clay he fashions those vessels which serve for clean purposes and the contrary sort, all alike.
So this potter stuff straight out of Jeremiah.
But what shall be the use of each vessel of either class? The worker in the clay decides. So the theme is reminiscent of the story about Amasis, narrated by Herodotus 2:172, and often quoted by Christian writers. For rabbinic allusions to the story, there's some other guy named Lieberman who you can read. Philo 2 refers to this theme. The image's substance is wood and stone, till a short time ago completely shapeless, hewn away from their congenital structure by quarrymen and woodcutters, while their brethren, pieces from the same original source, have become urns and foot basins, or some others of less honorable vessels, which serve the purpose of darkness rather than light. See also Romans 9:21, has the potter no right over the clay to make out of the same lump one vessel for beauty and another for menial use? Epicharmus, fragment 131, says, out of any piece of wood the yoke of the plow may be made out, and out of the same piece a god. So, this is something that many authors point out. With misspent toil, he molds a nothing god out of the same clay. He who but shortly before came into being out of the earth and shortly after returns whence he was taken, when the life that was lent him is demanded back.
Yeah, so a lot of this, we kind of, talk about, going back to the earth, right? When we die, we're just, we just rot, and now we can, feed the worms. So the moment of death is described through an image that appears in only late canonical texts. The soul is described as being on lease and as returning to the Creator at death. In the famous passage on death in Ecclesiastes, the moment of death is depicted through the double movement of the bodies returning to the earth and the spirits returning to God, who had originally given it. The wisdom text describes death as the body returning to the earth from which it was taken when the time comes for the soul that was borrowed to be returned. The obvious source for such imagery is the Yahwist version of the creation of Adam. Adam was formed, and of course, Yahwist and Elohist, and all those terms aren't the best terms. We just kind of use them now as place markers, but nobody, even someone who follows the documentary hypothesis, no longer divides it up by the names that God is called. So yeah, it's just kind of what's the word I'm looking for? It's just pragmatic at this point. Just like, this general composition here.
So Jason pointed out Numbers 21 verses 6 and 8. So the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, and many of the people of Israel died. Then the Lord said to Moses, make a fiery serpent and set it on a pole, and it shall be everyone who is bitten when he looks at it shall live. So
I think, was the serpent also in? No, the serpent wasn't in Exodus. Never mind.
There was a serpent in Genesis.
We're not talking about that. Actually, we're a little bit talking about Genesis. So the obvious source for such imagery is the Yahwist version of the creation of Adam. Adam was formed from the earth, and the breath of life was breathed into his nostrils so that he became a living being. Okay, so straight up right in there, here's earth, and then here's the breath of life.
Yeah, and this will occur in a couple of verses too.
Sure. I'm going to continue on here, though.
Okay.
But in the account of the punishment for his and Eve's disobedience, the Genesis text speaks only of the return of Adam to the earth. Nothing is said of the living breath returning to God. In the Gospel of Luke, such an image sways in the background when the rich fool is reprimanded. Quote, "This very night your life is being demanded of you." Luke 12:20. Only in verse 8 do we have the explicit comparison of death to the return on a lease. The idea that life is borrowed and that death constitutes the return of life to the proprietor was known both in Greek and Roman literature. Quote, "Life is granted to no one as formal possession, but to all on lease." And that was from Lucretius. Philo employs the same idea on several occasions. Quote, "Now the creator of life has given you a lone life, he has given you on lone life, speech, and sensation." Josephus appeals to the same idea when he explains to his fellow Jews why he did not commit suicide as a result was captured by the Romans. Quote, "Those who die at the time when the Creator demands it by following the natural law and give back to God the loan they had received, they will obtain immortal glory." Okay, so that's actually okay, I see. So that actually makes sense why there are so many people who, like, specifically religious people who are like, if you kill yourself, you're going to hell kind of thing. Or you won't be with God or something like that. God will be mad, right? Because they view that as like, this is the gift that God gave you and you're just spitting in his face. Like, this isn't the proper time. I suppose that makes sense now. Okay.
But his concern is not that his health is likely to fail or that his life will shortly end, but he vies with goldsmiths and silversmiths and emulates molders of bronze and considers it high honor to fashion counterfeits. His heart is ashes, his hope is meaner than dirt, and his life more ignoble than clay, because he knew not the one who fashioned him and infused him with an active soul and breathed into him a vital spirit. He rather counts our existence as a game, and our life a holiday bargain fair. For one must earn a living, he says, from whatever source, however foul. For this man knows more than any other that he is doing wrong, fabricating from earthen stuff frail vessels and carved images.
Carved images.
Yes.
Horrible.
Yeah. And now we're getting into the last section, which there isn't much commentary on in here.
So in all its brevity, this passage, I'm assuming 14 through 19,
Yes.
those last verses, yeah. This passage brings to a close the author's critique of idolatry. The particular idolaters under discussion are identified as the enemies of God's people. This is the typical designation for the Egyptians throughout the Midrashic treatment of the Exodus from Egypt. Other designations for the Egyptians link the oppressors of Israel to the wicked in the first part of the book. So we got adjectives like wicked, ungodly, unjust, foolish. We're going to talk about their idolatry.
Yes. And I'll only really have commentary in here for the last verse.
Oh, okay.
But most foolish of all, and sorrier than blind infants, are the enemies and oppressors of your people. For even all the idols of the nations they accounted gods, though they have neither use of eyes for seeing, nor nostrils for drawing breath, nor ears to hear, nor fingers for feeling, and their feet are ineffectual for walking.
That's classic biblical anti-idol speak.
Yeah, classic. It was a man who made them, and one who borrowed his breath shaped them. For no human has the power to fashion a god like himself.
Okay, so I see what they're going for. like you were just this life was given to you like temporarily, and you're just trying to breathe it into someone else, you ungrateful prick.
Yeah. But being mortal, he makes a lifeless thing with his lawless hands, for he surpasses the objects of his worship in that he had life, but they never did. Moreover, they worship the most hateful beasts, who, compared for brutishness, are worse than all the rest. Nor do they chance to have a trace of beauty, so as to make them objects of desire to the extent that this is possible with a beastly appearance, but they have escaped both the approval of God and his blessing. And that's the end of the chapter.
So the critique against the Egyptians' false worship focuses on two forms, syncretistic idolatry and zolatry. The acceptance of all the idols of the nations and not merely one's own condenses the author's critique of idolatry. Various arguments already alluded to in the earlier treatment of idolatry provide proof for the most severe judgment reserved to the Egyptians. This tendency to attribute divine status to the various idols was particularly acute in Hellenism. It was especially predominant in Ptolemaic Egypt. The lifelessness of all such idols is again recounted in traditional fashion, I'd say so. Although the idols, although the idols have all these things, they can't do anything with them.
Yeah. So escaping both the approval of God and his blessing, this is certainly not a Jewish teaching, and the author appears to be alluding to one of the characteristic doctrines of Zoroastrianism.
Oh.
Quote, all that is aggressive or repulsive, writes M. Boyce, is classified as Davic, and in time a whole double vocabulary developed for good and evil creatures. Davic creatures were naturally considered as unclean in themselves, and to slay them was a positive merit. For there is no sin in bringing death to the creatures of him who created death. The generic Avestan term for them, Krafstra, used by the prophet himself, occurs in Middle Iranian as Krafstar, or dialectically Frustar. It was applied particularly to insects and reptiles, but could be also used of beasts of prey. Destroying such creatures amounted, in Zoroastrian eyes, to eliminating sources of evil and corruption, and so seemed unquestionably good, as does the destruction of disease germs and microbes to the rationalists today. This practice continued down the ages, being first noticed by Herodotus, and till the mid-19th century, the Zoroastrians of Kerman kept up an annual observance called Karastar Kosi, when members of the community went out into the plains around the city and slew as many Karastars as they could, such as
Weasel Stomping Day?
Such as scorpions, tarantulas, lizards, snakes, ants, and all else that crept and crawled, pricked, bit, or stung, seemed hideous and repulsive.
The evil, scary ones.
Yeah.
So, although the author does not have quite the dualistic good and evil view that Zoroastrians quite do, it's certainly, I'd say maybe approaching it, getting kind of close there. So the NIB states that although the author does not adhere to such a dualism of good and evil as that of Zoroastrianism, it is possible that some of the formulations of its ideas have influenced the author's argument. I'd say the way that this is written out about the specific beasts and stuff, we haven't really, when talking about beasts, biblically speaking, you usually get beasts are going to be living in a place after it's completely desolate, right? And that's the imagery of something being completely destroyed. They're never, aside from, what's clean and unclean, that would be as close as it gets. So while it's not quite Zoroastrian, it is kind of approaching Zoroastrian.
Yeah.
So I could see some influence there.
Yeah.
It's possible.
But with that being said, that's the end of our readings for today. If you enjoyed the stream today, give us a like, share, comment, subscribe. Check us out on Amazon. We got a wish list. Check us out on Patreon. We've got all sorts of goodies that you can get. Check us out on Teespring. We got all sorts of wacky and fun T-shirts.
Yeah. In fact, you know what? I think Chris here is going to post or pin a T-shirt. I think he'd really love to do that. He's going with the Unforgivable shirt.
Haven't done that one yet.
I mean, I think we have, but either way, it doesn't matter.
I pinned that one. No way.
It's that one's been out for a while, but yes, there it is, and so are the rest of our shirts. We got a new one out too.
Yeah.
Nothing new under the sun. We got quite a lot of shirts because Landon continuously wins. So gotta keep making new shirts.
If you want one of those, you can either buy them on Teespring or, try your chances at our T-shirt giveaway.
Yeah.
Either way, your support is encouraged and welcome.
It is. We very much appreciate it. We're gonna spinny wheelie on Sunday.
Spinny wheelie.
Yeah, we're gonna say that now.
We're gonna do that on Sunday, and we are gonna have Landon on the show. We're going to get right through Lamentations, and I think we're gonna be, as far as apocryphal stuff goes, I think we're gonna be doing Judith next. Unless
but next week we will be finishing the Wisdom of Solomon.
Yes.
Sunday we'll be starting and finishing. What is it now?
Lamentations.
Lamentations.
Yeah. And actually, hold on. What's after that? Ezekiel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be a fun one. Ezekiel. There's lots of crazy stuff in Ezekiel.
Oh yeah, there is.
Yeah.
Those men whose members were like that of donkeys.
Oh yeah, that
their
classic verse.
excretions like those of horses.
That verse is
was
great.
A man from Nantucket.
Anyways, then we got Daniel. That one's gonna be a fun one. And then we're gonna get into the minor prophets there. So Hosea, Amos, Joel, Obadiah. Oh boy, yeah, some of these books.
Yeah, we're getting into
short.
the short ones,
which means we're almost done.
Almost
with the Old
done.
Testament.
Yeah, holy shit, huh?
Wow.
What a years of experience.
Yeah. Well, probably like, I don't know, dozens of more episodes before we actually finish the Old Testament.
Yes.
We'll be done this year.
I think we
probably
will be done this
by
year.
We'll be
January.
done this year.
Probably by January.
Yeah.
But like 4 years, right? Roughly.
Almost
yeah.
there.
So that makes us basically a religious studies program at a university, right?
You know what? Yes. Yes.
And you would know because you're a religious studies major.
I am. And it's
something.
It's sad.
Yeah. I don't think that seminaries have to be accredited.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, if they don't, you can get your doctorate of divinations in theology.
I was totally considering applying to become like a Catholic school like professor or something.
Yeah.
Like a part-time or like a summer school one or something like that. And they're like, you gotta be Catholic. And I'm like, damn. I mean, I could have like pretended, but I didn't feel like that'd be right.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
It would probably just annoy them if you brought in some legal troubles. And
you can get an
them.
honorary PhD from whatever religion I make, which is currently called Nesiology.
Of course it's called Nesiology.
Chris wants to start another cult.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Again.
Back to high school.
Yes, but this time with legal backing and precedence. Wouldn't that be fun?
No.
That would
what if you
just
got
be a pain
free
in the
stuff?
ass.
Also, no.
That's not how that works. That just means you don't have to pay taxes on certain things. That isn't free stuff.
Yeah, free stuff.
And it means you can't tell people who to vote for.
Yeah.
And you have to do
I wouldn't do that anyways.
And you have to do charity work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my charity work is telling people that things don't matter and that's okay.
No, you have to do material charity work.
Oh
Yeah,
my god.
You do.
Like
that's how you get that
Picking up
exemption.
trash from the highway.
Oh, that's fun.
Or
though.
donating canned foods in large amounts to the homeless. who
You'd
don't
basically
have,
have
can
to.
openers.
You have to help
you'd have
people?
to. You'd
Oh,
have
no.
to take over some of the things that the government should be doing. Hear that, government?
Yeah. You also couldn't say that it's the government should be doing it because the government would prevent you from getting your tax write-offs.
All right. Either way, we've
Freedom of speech. I don't know. Either
There
way.
is no freedom of speech.
No.
all the links
stuff.
for everything are in the description. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah.
Free to follow us on there.
Follow us there. Follow us on YouTube.
We showed the rest of the stuff. All the links.
BitChute.
Yeah, I suppose that there is a BitChute.
Yeah, there's a couple videos. Lawrence could upload more.
Let's not troll him now. Are we ready
Theoretically.
to say goodbye?
All right. Yes. And to everyone, we will see you on Sunday.
For
And
the
then
spinny wheelie.
Friday.